Portable TV. Come watch with me. A major Apple iPhone supplier in India is under investigation after a riot broke out inside their factory. The riot reportedly caused by workers who are upset about not getting paid. They caused millions of dollars worth of damages. And as the investigation continues, Apple is sending a team of auditors and representatives now to India. Natasha Sweet has the report.
Violence at a factory that manufactures iPhones erupts in the Kolar district of southern India Sunday. Police say roughly 100 people have been arrested. According to local reports, a large group of employees damaged the building, destroyed equipment, even setting fire to vehicles. Damages are estimated at $7 million. Local media saying these workers were protesting as a result of not being paid. Police condemn the rioting.
No one has the power to take law and order in their own hands. If anyone has problems, they should approach their department or the labor department. It's wrong to become violent like this. The police are conducting appropriate inquiries.
Wistron, a Taiwanese-based supplier, is the manufacturer which makes iPhones in India. The U.S.-China trade war helped pave the way for India to become a manufacturing alternative to China for Apple and other big tech companies. Here you see Apple CEO Tim Cook meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi back in 2016, discussing possible investments in India. Apple started making iPhones in India in 2017 through 3 different manufacturers, including Wistron. The factory violence comes as India faces a recession. New legislation is looking to reform labor laws, which locals have protested against. The law passed will reportedly enable companies to easily fire employees. Legislation will also make it more difficult for workers to unionize or go on strike. Apple said employees and auditors were being sent to India this week to aid in the investigation and to see if workers were being paid. Plans have been in the works for Apple to open its first physical retail store in India come next year. Reporting for In Question, Natasha Sweet, RT.
So as the investigation continues at this facility in India and production now suspended, how is this going to impact the workers there? Joining us to discuss all of this, host of Boom Bust, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, what exactly are these workers claiming?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because we keep hearing that they're not being paid. They're actually being paid. The problem is, Manila, we're talking about in recent weeks, the payments that are coming to these workers are dropping considerably. So according to the Times of India, a couple of interesting things here. Workers are apparently getting, I'm going to just translate this into US dollars to give you an idea, about $286 a month. That is the salary for somebody who is apparently an engineering graduate. They were promised a salary of $286 per month. But over the last few weeks, that amount has been declining. It's dropped about 40% now to around $163 a month. So workers are getting frustrated over that. But then you also have to take this into account, that the majority of these workers say that their salaries are as low as $6.80 per month. So when we see these guys rioting and they're tearing the building apart and $7 million worth of damages, you would think it would make a whole lot of sense just to pay them some kind of a decent wage rather than dealing with all the aftermath that's come from nickel and diming these guys.
Yeah, I'm curious to know why the payment problem started in the first place. I mean, this isn't just the factory workers, right? I mean, it's important to point out, like you said, some of these guys are actually engineers.
That's right. They're engineers. And what's really incredible about this is you have to think about what's taking place here. So we heard Natasha talking about the fact that this is an Apple company, a company that works on behalf of Apple, a subsidiary, if you will, or a contractor, excuse me, that develops iPhones in India. And so you would expect, listen, obviously they're trying to hold costs down. The whole point of Apple moving to India and building in the country is to bring costs down. But again, we're talking about unbelievably low wages. And when you're a company like Apple, one of the richest companies in the world, why are you allowing this to take place at all? And let's not pretend that Apple thinks that these guys are getting good wages and cares about that. Apple notoriously builds phones in China at incredibly low wages for the people there. And the same thing is happening in India.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in years past, Ben, remember Foxconn and those workers, they had to have the suicide nets outside of the windows because the working conditions were so awful and their pay was so awful. Well, that said, we've seen the damage that the workers caused. What kind of kink does this put in the production process? Any timelines, the supply chain? Does this slow things down for the Christmas holiday?
Well, it's only in India because remember, the whole point of this is that Apple was essentially trying to get around these massive import fees. India has very high import fees for any products that are built in China and then shipped into India. So what Apple's trying to do is get around those import fees and build the phones actually in India that are sold in India. So these are not phones that we would be getting here in the United States. These are phones that are specifically being made for India. And the reason for that is because Apple only has about 3% of the market in India. The phones are too expensive there. They're trying to bring down the cost of those phones. And again, production in India would help with that process. But so it's not really going to affect holiday sales in India because obviously you're such a small portion of the cell phone market there. But this certainly doesn't help Apple's case. If you're trying to build up brand loyalty in a country like India and you have workers destroying a building and destroying a factory that they're working in because they're not getting paid, I would say there's far more damage being done to Apple's reputation in India if you're trying to build up a loyal audience and trying to get people to try this phone for the first time.
Yeah, Ben, I gotta ask then, if they only have about 3%, Apple that is, in India, I gotta ask, is the #1 phone there a Huawei phone?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect that it is, but we also know that the government of India is pushing Huawei out. So Samsung is very strong there, and there are other phone makers who are there. Huawei obviously is pretty strong, but again, you're going to run into the same import shipping coming from China and into India.
So then obviously this has got to be the specific reason that Apple is doing business in India is to skirt around these China, the cost of bringing the phones from China into India.
That's right. That's exactly why they're doing it. That's why they've started building specifically in India. And again, I just got to say, you know, for a company like Apple that is worth so much money, that has so many billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars running through their company, and let's face it, Apple is the most valuable company in the world, rivaling Amazon. And yet you can't pay workers a decent wage, and it just doesn't make any sense. In this day and age, you would think there would be a higher expectation. When a company like Apple, or a CEO like Tim Cook wants to talk about social issues in the United States, you need to sit down until you can learn how to pay your workers around the world.
Yeah, Ben, it has obviously been really brought to light, I think, during this COVID pandemic, the mass movement of wealth from the have-nots to even more so to the haves. I think the coronavirus pandemic is obviously impacting India. It's the second highest affected country in the world. So obviously this has got to be hurting for all those families there.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I mean, to your point about the wealth issue, just think about the United States. In the United States, since the beginning of lockdowns, U.S. billionaires have collectively increased their wealth by $1 trillion. That's trillion with a T, $1 trillion. U.S. billionaires are now worth $4.1 trillion collectively. That is more than twice as much as 165 million Americans on the lower end. 165 million people have half the wealth of the U.S. billionaires. And again, that's an increase of $1 trillion since 9 months ago when the lockdown started.
Yeah, then you have a billionaire like Tim Cook over there shaking hands and asking these people to do the work for them. Ben Swan, thank you so much for that deep dive.